Good morning, club members. We digest world-class journalism and talk it through in plain English. Here are 5 stories worth your time. Colombian drug cartels are sending former soldiers to the front lines in Ukraine. They want these men to acquire advanced battlefield skills in operating military drones. Recruiters target experienced veterans who join volunteer foreign units on the front line. These men learn to build, modify, and pilot high-tech aerial weapons in active combat. Ukrainian recruiting officers recently caught several suspects with cartel links and expelled them. However, many former paramilitaries and guerrillas still manage to complete their combat training. Once their contract ends, these trained fighters bring their lethal expertise back home. They plan to deploy these new aerial tactics directly against South American soldiers. For decades, the Colombian army maintained total control over the skies above the jungle. Cheap commercial drones have now completely upended that traditional military advantage. Illegal armed groups launched over 260 drone attacks in recent years. These early strikes mostly used simple consumer models adapted to drop small explosives. They killed several soldiers and even hit a remote military radar installation. Government forces managed to stop 96% of those early incoming strikes. Soldiers used radio frequency jammers to disrupt control signals and force crashes. That successful defense forced criminal recruiters to look for more clever ways around it. They are now learning to operate agile, first-person view attack drones. Pilots steer these suicide craft directly into targets to detonate on collision. Cartels also want to learn how to encrypt their radio communications properly. Another new tactic involves buying drones linked by ultra-thin fiber optic cables. Physical glass threads allow long-distance control without any radio signal at all. That feature makes radio frequency jamming weapons completely useless against them. The government in Bogotá is trying to halt this dangerous technology transfer. Ministers introduced tight import restrictions on all unmanned aerial hardware and parts. They also promised $1.6 billion for anti-drone protection shields. This system includes vehicle-mounted frequency jammers and long-range radar detectors. Yet stopping the flow of returning veterans with fresh combat experience is far harder. Battlefield secrets move across borders much faster than official regulations can follow. Can static defensive shields protect soldiers when small-scale war tech spreads globally? That remains the troubling uncertainty facing military commanders across South America. Moving from drone battlefields to tribunal hearing rooms, our second story lands right here in Britain. The government hoped artificial intelligence would save billions of pounds by automating routine administrative tasks. Instead, ordinary citizens are using free chatbots to fire complex legal challenges right back at the state. If you ask a free tool to draft a complaint, it generates detailed legal arguments within seconds. That sounds like a win for public access, but it is creating a massive bureaucratic traffic jam. Consider Britain's employment tribunals, which handle legal disputes between workers and their employers. In the year to March, claims filed by employees jumped by nearly 40% to 50,000. At the same time, the total backlog of unresolved cases grew by over 50%. If an employee files a claim today, they may wait until 2030 for justice. Part of the surge comes from obscure emergency laws that judges rarely used to see. One emergency rule allows judges to order immediate wage payments for workers who complain of unfair dismissal. Tribunals across Britain used to receive about 20 of these applications in an entire year. Now, regional offices receive around 20 of those applications every single month. AI software helps people write legal claims, predict employer defences, and structure cross-examination tips. Most of these automated applications will fail, but courts must give every properly filed claim a hearing. This wave of machine-generated paperwork stretches far beyond employment courts. Property owners are using AI services to scan planning documents and write opposition speeches for public meetings. Drivers use chatbots to contest parking fines, while tenants challenge rent increases with automated letters. Researchers call this trend agentic flooding, where software bombards public bodies with relentless formal appeals. Automated tools digest small print easily, fill out forms perfectly, and never tire of mind-numbing bureaucracy. Similar surges are hitting municipal tax offices in the Netherlands and privacy regulators in Canada. For citizens with genuine grievances, these huge backlogs mean waiting years to get a fair hearing. For public agencies, staff hours spent reading machine-written demands erase any promised cost savings. The British government wants to expand worker rights while cutting civil service expenditure. Yet when every citizen carries an automated lawyer in their pocket, the system simply locks up. Public officials now face a choice between restricting automated submissions or building AI defenders to answer them. Moving from courtroom technology, our third topic brings us onto European highways. Across the continent, more than 500,000 truck driver jobs sit empty. That figure represents about 13% of the total haulage workforce. Industry estimates suggest the shortage could exceed 600,000 within 4 years. 1 in 5 active drivers is expected to retire by 2030. Poland built the largest truck fleet in Europe over the past 2 decades. Polish operators currently carry 20% of all road freight in the bloc. Yet 2/3 of European transport companies now turn down business due to missing staff. The central problem is an aging workforce without enough young recruits to replace them. Younger workers see little appeal in spending weeks away from home on long trips. They prefer local jobs that offer predictable hours and low stress. One Polish freight firm recently increased driver pay by 15%. Despite that generous pay raise, the company still lacks 20 drivers this summer. That gap shows that higher wages alone cannot resolve driver dissatisfaction. Increasing regulations and strict border checks add long delays to daily routes. Roadside security has also become a severe worry for drivers across Europe. Nearly 4 in 5 drivers report facing security threats while parked overnight. Over 80% of transport firms report theft or vandalism in unsecured parking zones. These crime fears help explain why women make up only 4% of drivers. Nearly 80% of haulage companies in Europe are tiny, family-sized businesses. Small operators rarely have the money to invest in private security or higher pay packages. High-tech alternatives, like self-driving trucks, remain far off in the future. Meanwhile, road transport carries a quarter of all freight moved across Europe. As thousands of trucks stay parked, shipping costs across the continent are rising. Delivery schedules are slowing down for factory parts and daily supermarket goods. European supply chains were already feeling stress from international trade disputes. Now, this driver shortage threatens to slow down the wider European economy. Without safer parking areas and younger recruits, European logistics will remain stuck in low gear. For our fourth story today, we turn from European road freight to Russian weapons factories. War is usually very profitable for defense contractors. When major conflicts start, governments place massive orders to replace spent weapons. Company stock values rise, and corporate profits soar. In the United States, aerospace and defense firms expect huge paydays ahead. In Russia, however, the situation is completely different. The country has been fighting in Ukraine for over 4 years, yet its massive state defense conglomerate is suffering severe financial losses. This enormous firm oversees more than 800 subcontractors across 60 regions. Last year, its total revenue actually grew by 25%. That growth came from urgent military orders placed by the Kremlin. However, its net profit dropped by 42% during that same period. The company leadership recently admitted they have little money left for new investments. The state pays low fixed prices for military gear sent straight to the battlefield. At the same time, high inflation and heavy borrowing costs destroy profits. Historically, Russian defense companies made their real money from selling weapons overseas. Those international export sales have now almost completely collapsed. Sanctions and domestic war demands have trapped Russian production at home. Russia was long the second largest arms exporter in the world. Over recent years, its international weapon exports fell by 64%. France has now pushed Russia down into third place globally. Demand for high-tech French fighter jets remains strong across the globe. Russia simply has no spare factory capacity to supply foreign customers. As a result, several major Russian military suppliers are hurting. A prominent Russian truck maker recently posted massive net financial losses. Its vehicle sales plummeted by more than 20% in a single year. The country's largest tank builder faced a similar economic crisis. It reduced civilian production lines to a 4-day work week. It also cut 10% of its entire workforce. The Russian government has tried to hide these economic troubles. New decrees banned defense companies from publishing their financial results. Official trade statistics have been hidden under state secret laws. Still, the central dilemma for Moscow remains clear. Russia is consuming its existing weapons stock at a rapid pace. Because profits have collapsed, it cannot fund the development of future weapon systems. Former foreign buyers are switching permanently to other global suppliers. When this conflict ends, Russia may find its defense industry permanently weakened. Finally, we turn to our last story of the day. After looking at Russia's collapsing arms trade, we now look at a very different search for security. This one is happening on dry land, deep underground. When critical sea lanes shut down, moving oil across the world becomes a nightmare. The recent closure of the Strait of Hormuz has shown how fragile ocean trade routes really are. If tankers cannot sail through a narrow waterway, millions of barrels of oil get trapped. Trapped oil loses its value very quickly. In fact, blocking 1 million barrels a day for 1 year can cost $30 billion. Moving that oil by truck or train is around 5 times more expensive than shipping it. That leaves governments and energy firms with only one practical choice. They must build heavy steel pipelines across thousands of kilometers of land. A massive pipeline construction boom is now underway around the globe. More than 12,000 kilometers of new oil pipelines are being built right now. Another 20,000 kilometers of pipelines are currently being planned. We can see this rush most clearly in the Middle East. Years ago, Saudi Arabia built a long pipeline from its main oil fields straight to the Red Sea. During the recent conflict, that single pipe kept oil flowing and protected company profits. Now, neighboring countries want similar protection. The United Arab Emirates plans to lay a new pipe to double its export capacity. Other regional projects plan to connect oil fields in Iraq to ports in Syria and Turkey. This movement goes far beyond the Middle East. In Argentina, workers are laying hundreds of kilometers of pipe to reach the Atlantic Ocean. In East Africa, a new pipeline will stretch over 1,400 kilometers to the coast. These giant engineering projects do not come cheap. A major pipeline costs around $5 million for every single kilometer. Crossing high mountains or rough ground can double or triple that price tag. Even with these huge costs, private investors are eager to fund them. They like these projects because buyers sign long-term contracts before construction starts. Under these agreements, customers pay for space even if they ship less oil. That guaranteed income gives investors the confidence to spend billions up front. This global boom marks a major shift in world trade. Nations no longer want to rely entirely on vulnerable ocean passages. They prefer paying heavy prices today to secure reliable energy routes for tomorrow. That brings us to the end of today's stories. Thank you for sharing your breakfast with me, and I will see you tomorrow morning.